The projects you'll manage will face many different risks. Project risks have two characteristics. They're events that might happen, and they have the potential to impact one or more of the project objectives. There are two types of project risks, namely negative risks and positive risks. A negative risk is also called a threat. This type of risk has the potential to harm a project and its objectives. Positive risks are also called opportunities. These can benefit a project's objectives. All projects face risks of some kind. Being able to spot risks means being able to spot a possible, unexpected event that may have an impact on the project's objectives. But you should also be able to determine whether the risk is good or bad. As you work with the project team and stakeholders to identify all of the potential risks for the project, you should document them. A risk register is a common document for listing known risks and information about them. Once you have listed all of the known risks for your project, it may seem overwhelming. Just because the list is long doesn't mean that you have to act on every one. The best thing to do is analyze the risk and rank them based on the probability of occurring and the impact on the project if they do. Probability is the chance of something happening. It can be low, high, or anything in between. For example, you determine how likely it is that heavy rain will stop construction work on your project during the summer. In order to rate the impact of any given risk, you must understand what criteria will be used to determine a low, medium, and high rating. For example, if a risk event causes the budget to go over by 10%, will you consider the impact low or moderate? And what is the threshold between moderate and high impact? The answers to these questions form the definition of impact for your project. It is helpful to develop a system among team members where you assign a numerical value, such as a percentage, to what you mean by low or high. This ensures all team members are consistent when communicating about risk. Now let's talk about impact. Remember, a risk can impact any area of the project: cost, schedule, quality, or scope. When you consider the impact of a risk, you look at its severity. Risks are often rated as low, medium, or high, based on the impact they would have on meeting the project's objectives. It is useful to quantify the ratings and give each a threshold. For example, a risk may be low if it would impact the budget by less than 10%, and high if the impact is greater than 40%. A probability and impact matrix allows you to look up a combined probability and impact score for any given risk. For example, if you knew the risk of exceeding the budget has a 0.5 probability and a 0.75 impact, you would multiply these two numbers, giving you a rating of 0.38. You can use shading to illustrate if a rating falls within the low, moderate, or high category of risk in the matrix. In this case, the orange area with the largest numbers represents the high risk. The green area with the smallest numbers represents the low risk, and the blue area with in-between numbers represents the moderate risk. Examining how a problem was dealt with in the past can be as important as identifying a risk in the first place. Also, it can give you a greater insight into risks you have already identified. The team for the electric car project, for instance, consults the risk register of an earlier project that involved manufacturing a hybrid vehicle. The team notices that one of the major problems was that at the time of the vehicle's release, it wasn't compatible with the latest and most efficient battery. This meant that extra expense had to be incurred to produce an adapter. To arrive at an overall risk score, you multiply its probability by its impact. So if you were using a low, medium, high type scale, you could use a chart similar to the one here to determine a risk's overall rating. If you're using numeric ratings, you can use a probability and impact matrix. In this example, impact and probability have been given scores of 0 to 1. So a probability of 0.5 means that there's a 50% chance of it happening. An impact rating of 0.1 means the impact would be 1 out of 10 on a scale from 1 to 10. Let's use an example. Suppose you're developing a software user interface. You've identified a risk that the user interface will not adequately cover all of the needed privacy checks required by regulations. The risk has been assigned a probability of 0.5 and an impact of 0.9. Its risk score is 0.45. Using the matrix, you determine that this risk has a high probability because the corresponding cell is in the orange shaded area. For risk management to succeed, you must respond proactively. If you only respond once an event occurs, you will waste time and resources needlessly trying to manage it. It's a lot better to avoid fires than to waste time and resources putting them out. Risk management has two central roles: reducing uncertainty about identified risks and determining appropriate responses for possible risks that can't be avoided. These roles enable you to eliminate some of the negative outcomes and take advantage of positive outcomes if a risk event occurs.